Good evening. I'd like to call to order the 17th March 2026 Methacton School Board of Directors work session meeting to order. Please stand for the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The public is hereby advised of audio and video recording of this meeting for the purposes of rebroadcasting. All board members are in attendance with the exception of Mr. Winters, who is excused, and then we have Ms. Chanda and Ms. Okindo participating virtually. Recognition of guests and scheduled speakers, Dr. Zerbe.
Thank you, Madam President. Before I do that, I have two quick announcements. This evening, the Board of School Directors took part in the Rock Your Socks Down Syndrome Awareness Campaign. On March 21st, World Syndrome Day is a moment to recognize the importance of celebrating the unique strength each individual brings to our school community. This global day of awareness is symbolized by Rock Your Socks to spark conversations about acceptance and belonging. At this week's work session, the Board of School Directors and I joined in the spirit of wearing some colorful socks. Although March 21st falls on a Saturday this year, I encourage all of you to wear your craziest colorful socks to show your support for individuals with Down syndrome. This is a great reminder that even small gestures like this can help build more inclusive culture in our Methacton community. In addition, this evening, I want to recognize the students and staff of the Methacton Windy Hill Farm, led from our high school, for their recognition and thanks to each of the 9 Methacton School Board Directors for not only their commitment to the freight farm and hydroponics lab, but to the education within this great community. Each board member has been provided a small sampling of fresh produce from the hydroponics farm and a thank you card from a student. I warn you that this is some of the best tasting produce you will ever eat, and it is amazing how all of this was started with an idea from a single teacher that was supported by the board and the Methacton Education Foundation that has become one of the only fully student-operated hydroponic freight farms on the East Coast. So thank you, Methacton Education Foundation and the Methacton School Board, and thank you to our students and our teacher for their ingenuity and inventiveness. So with that, we're going to move on to the March 17 guests and scheduled speakers. We have 2 this evening. We have Chief Stead, our Chief of Police, to talk about a safety and security update, and then we have a literacy update by our Director of Curriculum and Instruction, Dr. Gorla. So with that, the safety update, Chief Stead. Members of the board, both of these presentations should be at your table in the packet.
Good evening, Madam President, members of the board, Dr. Zerbe, and everyone here from the Methacton community. My name is Mark Stead, and I am honored to speak to you tonight as your Chief of Police. Oh, sorry about that. I bring more than 25 years of law enforcement experience to this role, but what matters most is that 10 of those years were spent right here in our schools as your school resource officer. During that time, this district became more than just an assignment. It became a community I am proud to support and deeply committed to protecting. Before stepping into this role, I served as an administrative sergeant with the Lower Providence Township Police Department, overseeing supervisory and administrative operations. While I wasn't stationed inside schools during that time, I remained closely connected, supporting safety planning, emergency preparedness, and day-to-day coordination, while making sure Methacton schools were always part of that effort. I also supervised our community policing unit, working directly with churches, businesses, organizations, and residents, building relationships, identifying concerns early, and addressing issues before they became larger problems. I served as an instructor at the Montgomery County Community College Municipal Police Academy, teaching future police officers juvenile law and restorative practices, with a strong emphasis on positive, effective engagement with our young people. Throughout my career, I've completed command level and executive leadership training through Northwestern University and Penn State's Justice and Safety Institute, focused on decision-making, accountability, and organizational leadership. That combination, time inside schools, administrative leadership, and command level training is what I believe allows me to serve this district thoughtfully and effectively. Tonight, I'd like to briefly share my approach to school safety, the progress we've made so far, what this role looks like in practice, and my vision where we're headed. Oops. When I think about school safety, I don't see it as a checklist or a single program. I see it as a mindset that guides our everyday decisions. 3 things drive everything we do. Preparation, because it allows people to respond calmly and confidently instead of reacting under pressure. When expectations are clear and training is intentional, situations get handled more consistently and with better outcomes. Relationships, because trust and open communication allow us to recognize concerns early, address them appropriately, and prevent issues from escalating further. In a school setting, being visible and approachable makes a real difference. And at the center of it all is student success. Safety isn't about enforcement. It's about creating an environment where students feel safe, secure, supported, and able to focus on learning. Over the past several months, we've focused on strengthening and expanding our prevention-based approach, starting with ensuring that the foundation is solid. We established clear roles, reporting processes, and operational expectations for our school police and security officers. That structure creates consistency, accountability, and transparency across the district. We strengthened coordination both internally and with district leadership and externally with our municipal and emergency response partners. Those strong relationships and clear lines of communication allow us to respond effectively when it matters most. We reviewed and aligned our safety procedures and emergency response protocols to make sure they reflect best practices and the specific needs of Methacton. And we began building out ongoing training. Not just policies on paper, but practices that are understood, applied, and continuously refined. With that foundation now in place, we're positioned to lead with prevention. That means proactive safety practices, strong communication within each building, and training that supports early identification and effective response. In short, we're building the systems that help prevent incidents and support safe, stable learning environments across the district. At its core, the Chief of Police role is about coordination and consistency. I oversee safety and security operations across the district and work to keep expectations, communication, and decision-making aligned across all of our schools. I lead and participate in multidisciplinary threat assessment meetings, which allow us to identify concerns early, share information responsibly, and take a coordinated approach to keeping our schools safe. A big part of this role is supporting administrators as situations arise, whether it's a student behavioral concern, a student in crisis, a parent-related issue, or another sensitive situation where safety and judgment are critical. In those moments, again, the focus isn't enforcement. It's early intervention and problem solving, with student well-being at the center of every decision. This position has also made possible something that didn't previously exist in this district: direct, real-time connectivity with our public safety partners. I now have access to a dedicated police radio and live law enforcement monitoring systems. That means immediate communication and real-time situational awareness when seconds matter. Above all, the goal is simple. No administrator or staff member should ever have to navigate a safety concern alone. They should have consistent professional support before, during, and after any challenging situation. Looking ahead, my focus is on building a unified, district-wide safety framework, one where students, staff, and administrators feel prepared, supported, and confident, regardless of the building or the situation. A critical area of focus will be continuing to strengthen training in a responsible and age-appropriate way, building on programs like ALICE, which we introduced to designated response teams last year and continued discussing with staff this year. Our goal moving forward is to expand that training so that all staff members become familiar with the ALICE concept. We will also expand age-appropriate emergency preparedness instruction for our students. This isn't about fear-based instruction, it's about practical preparation that helps our school community respond calmly if the need ever arises. Strong partnerships within the district and with our public safety partners will remain essential to everything we do. In closing, school safety is built on thoughtful planning, strong relationships, and consistent leadership. I'm committed to working closely with the board, district leadership, staff, families, and our public safety partners to ensure our approach remains measured, sustainable, and always aligned with what's best for Methacton students. I'm deeply grateful for the trust you've placed in me as the district's first chief of police. With that, thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much, Chief. We appreciate you being here and being our support through all the matters that you've encountered already and that we are to encounter sometime in the future. But with that, are there any questions for Chief Stead to my left? Ms. Clary?
Thank you for the presentation. I would say that as a mother of a college student who experienced a mass shooting 4 years ago now, I'm deeply grateful that you're here and very supportive.
Thank you.
So thank you.
Thank you very much.
The couple of questions that I have are, how many officers work under you?
So currently, I'm the only district police officer,
Right.
but we contract with Cardinal Point Security, which places an armed officer at Arcola Skyview campus, 2 Cardinal Point security guards, police officers at the high school, and then we have 2 that float from building to the elementary schools, building to building.
Okay. And, okay. And then, as I listened to the presentation, one of the things I was thinking about was, how are you engaging? Can you talk a little bit about how you, or the officers that report into you, are engaging with the students on just not a level of intervention, of just engagement, and having them be comfortable with you and, you know, looking forward to seeing you and trusting you?
Sorry, I'm glad you asked that. The officers that we have in place now have made my job very easily. I walk into these buildings and I see them fist pumping students, students approaching them, engaging with students. Actually, I tell Dr. Sergini all the time that we've got some real gems working in the district right now. They're former police officers, and they're here to really, truly make a difference. And again, it makes my job extremely easy. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Any questions? Ms. Steele?
Thank you so much for the presentation. And I guess I don't necessarily have a question, but I just a comment really. I'm glad to hear. I mean, I am echoing off what Ms. Cleary shared, but as an educator myself, I'm glad to hear that there are plans moving forward for ALICE training for people in the district. I was trained in the ways before ALICE training, the lockdown drills, and different ways to handle. I'm now ALICE trained as well. It's not comfortable, but it's so important. And just to share, if anyone hasn't done it, it's vitally important in the way to respond and understand and empower when scary situations happen. We review it annually, and it's a reality today, and I'm just really glad that those are plans that are going forward. So thank you so much.
I appreciate that.
Any other questions? Ms. Perdue?
Thank you very much for your presentation. It was nice to see you when we did our tours in one of our buildings and just seeing how you've embedded yourself in the buildings itself, so I appreciate it. I know when we discussed this position, as we thought about putting this position in place, one of the things was ensuring that we still maintain a climate of belonging for our students, just because for some students, just knowing that there's a police officer available, and I mean, now we see it more, right? We have churches, at banks, everywhere I think our kids are at, they do see it, but for some students, it's still a matter of, it may raise some alerts for them or concern. And one of the discussions we had, I recall back here, was just ensuring that we still maintain the balance of safety and belonging for our students. So I want to hear from you how you're doing that, and also when we think about maybe some of the things you're doing when it comes to discipline or any of the issues, if you're connecting with some of our school counselors.
So right. So just so you understand, I don't do discipline. That's for the administration to do. But we do everything as a team. And it could be that I've been around long enough that people know me and what I'm capable of doing. But whenever we have a student issue, we work, the counselor, myself, the building administrator, we bring in our social worker. So it's a team effort. So we all work collectively. And then once we identify those issues, we work with those students. I find, for me, I look for the students that are the most challenging to break them down. I think that's very important to me. Every day's a new day, right? We accept what they did that day, but then the next day, we start over again. That's something I should say my wife taught me, but she's probably going to be upset with me for sharing that. But she's like, every day is a new day for these students, and that's my goal. So you mess up today, tomorrow we're going to work on that, and we're going to improve that. And I think over time, you build those relationships with those students.
Thank you. And then are there any metrics we need to put in place, or have you identified any gaps to ensure safety on our campus?
Sorry, respectfully, yes, but not ones that we would want to share publicly, but certainly ones that we'll share with the board moving forward.
Okay, thank you. And I appreciate you sharing your the vision and missions priorities moving forward. I think when I looked at it, as far as the unified district-wide safety framework, and I don't know if this is where, maybe this is more where it'll come, I was thinking like what is needed, right? And what is needed more in reference to from the board, like if there's anything that's coming up. And maybe that's something that you bring back to us later, but that was one of my questions for you, so thank you.
You're welcome.
Dr. Sergini, if you don't mind, you could explain in public the requirement under Act 44 and the meeting that we would have scheduled with the board to address those matters if you'd like.
Certainly, the Commonwealth requires that we meet in executive session once a year under Act 44 to provide the board with updates on our security efforts. Also, any of the areas that we've deemed as areas of risk and vulnerability that we need to work on, and that's something that Chief Stead and I are having constant conversations about, and then we will be reporting back to the board at that executive session later on this school year.
Perfect, thank you.
Any other questions or comments down here online? Okay.
Hello, thank you for the presentation. I was listening along. I'll go back and watch the slides. I was wondering if there are any plans to partner with the Belonging Coordinator.
Yeah. Yes. Yes, we have plans to coordinate with the Belonging Coordinator. You're welcome.
Ms. Alston?
Hi, thank you for the presentation. I was just curious about your role, like in terms of visibility in the buildings, just because I know from seeing you in the buildings prior that you really bring a great lift and you bring a great spirit, I think, to the students in the buildings. And I was just wondering, like, do you have a regular schedule to be in the buildings? I know you have the security people that you oversee, but like, what is your day-to-day like in the buildings? And do you have a regular schedule, or are you kind of there as needed? Just curious.
That's a really good question. Day-to-day, I never know. I have a plan in place for one day, and then I come in and it goes south, and I've learned that this week with a few incidents, situations. So, but my goal from the onset was to get into schools everywhere, every day. Each school, at least show my face in the lunchroom, the playground, walk in the halls, and just kind of engage the students that are here. But again, it's hard to keep a hard and fast timetable because I never know what the day is going to bring. You know, there's even the night before, I'm like, okay, I guess this isn't going to work. I have to do this. But my goal is to be present. And I've said that to Dr. Sergini from day one. I'm going to be out and about. Everybody's going to know who I am and what I'm about.
Thank you. Question or comments to my right? Ms. Graff?
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. I know, we've recently seen that there's been some districts that have really struggled. We had our student protest here, and I just want to thank you for working so closely with our administration and bringing your leadership to that experience and making it safe for our kids and allowing our kids to express themselves in a way that was still respectful and safe and kept our schools moving forward and learning that day. So I'm not exactly sure who made all those decisions along the way, but I am sure that your leadership and experience certainly weighed in on that, and I just want to thank you for that because I think it meant a lot to our kids. And I know it meant a lot to the rest of the kids in school that their day would continue on and there was not going to be a big disruption for, some students who wanted to do that. So I appreciate that.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I saw in your presentation when you talk about phase 2, and I guess my question to you is, what challenges are you seeing and what can the board do to support you in moving forward with your priorities?
Yeah, I honestly feel that the board has been extremely supportive since my boots hit the ground here in November. I haven't really met a challenge or come across a challenge, and correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Sergini, that I felt that we didn't get the support we needed from Dr. Zerbe and from the board. So, like I said, I'm very, very happy with how things are falling through or coming out.
Okay, that's great. I know this decision to move forward with the chief of police was a big one for the board, and I just want to make sure that we're providing you the support you need to be successful, right? Because these positions coming in can be difficult. There's a lot of change. There's a lot of potential, doing things a little differently that can be hard, and that can be an adjustment. And so I just want to echo that the board is supportive, and we want to be here to help you. And, I'd like to see you come forward periodically to make sure you're updating us, and if there's something that you need along the way, you let us know.
Thank you. I appreciate that very much.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none. Anything else for the greater good? Chief Stead, it's a pleasure to have you here this evening. It's a pleasure to have you as our key support for security and safety in the district. And thank you so much for all that you've done for our school community. Have a great evening.
Thank you, sir.
Next on the agenda, we have our Director of Curriculum and Instruction, Dr. Gorla. She will be presenting the literacy update. I think, Dr. Regina, you're going to give us a summary prior to that.
Yeah, thanks, Dr. Zerbe. So, as many of you know, we've been working with Schools Cubed, which is then Keys to Literacy, which has now been acquired by another company. But this all started with a literacy audit that we had a number of years ago and formed a partnership with a group that really started to establish some real foundational knowledge from both in our leadership team and our teaching group in terms of around structured literacy. And we've had the blessing, really, of working with them this year in our new partnership. What Dr. Gorla is going to be speaking to you tonight about is what is our partnership about with Keys to Literacy? What are the things that we worked on this year? And what is our hope to work on next year? And when I say hope, 11B1 is an agenda item, which is the contract to hopefully extend this into the second year of the program for Keys to Literacy and the training that they provide with our lab schools. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Dr. Gorla. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Like Trey said, Methacton partnered with Keys to Literacy this year to strengthen district-wide literacy instruction through professional development, coaching, and lab school visits with a focus on structured literacy practices. Early feedback and evaluation data indicate growth in areas such as data-informed instruction, professional learning, and consistent vocabulary and comprehension practices across classrooms. This presentation, again, will highlight the work that we've completed this year and will outline recommendations for continuing and deepening this work in year 2 of the partnership. So we begin. Oops. So to begin, just a little bit about what our Keys to Literacy partnership is. Truly, this is a multi-year collaboration that's focused on evidence-based instructional practices. When we entered into this agreement, the thought was that this is a multi-year process for us to see improvement over time. We have 2 designated lab schools, Eagleville Elementary and Arcola Intermediate School. This multi-year model is based on measurable progress. You'll see that there are different evaluation tools that guide this work. At Eagleville, it's the Literacy Evaluation Tool, also known as the LET, and at Arcola, it's the Effective Schools Evaluation Tool. There's a series of 7 2-day consultant visits for this year. So over that time, after each of those visits, our consultant actually gives a next steps process. The evaluation tools are used at the beginning of the year, middle of the year, and end of the year. Throughout this process, there's consultation with our consultant, with principals, the curriculum team, instructional coaches, and teaching staff. So really, it's a relationship, right, that you build with a consultant to be able to increase capacity and grow in your practice. The other piece of this Keys to Literacy partnership not found on the slides is our relationship with Patty Montgomery, who's one of the leaders of the Keys to Literacy group. Ms. Montgomery has been quite the resource for us as we've worked on our MTSS K-12 system initiative this year as well, to help draw the tightness between the literacy initiative and the MTSS initiative to really look at the different components, and I'll talk about that a little bit when we talk about our next year. Doesn't like to move. Oops. There we go. So our professional development this year with Keys to Literacy has been about building capacity through targeted cohorts and coaching. The professional development sessions this year were a cohort model. There were 40 people in those cohorts. They received training in both October and February. Our first segment of professional learning was in Keys to Beginning Reading. Each of our professional development sessions has different modules. I numbered these under Keys to Beginning Reading because there are actually 11 modules in this training topic. This year we focused on literacy basics, phonemic awareness, phonics and advanced word study, fluency, and vocabulary. That 40-person cohort for that training included our Eagleville staff, as well as representatives from each of the grade levels from our other elementary schools. Our other training focused on the key vocabulary routine. The key vocabulary routine training cohort included teachers in grade levels 5 through 8, as well as 2 representatives from our high school. It also included some follow-up coaching regarding these routines with both our teachers as well as our administrators. The key vocabulary routine training inspired larger targeted professional development sessions from 5 through 12 that were delivered by both our instructional coaches and members of the curriculum team, related to vocabulary strategies, related to basics such as the reading rope. And this was across content areas. And again, facilitated by our curriculum department and our instructional coaches. So when we look at where we want to go with next year, it becomes about continuing our implementation and expanding our impact. We want to continue our lab school model at Arcola and Eagleville. This allows us really to have one of our targets with our consultants to be enhancing the engagement of our principals across the district with similar processes in their buildings through the support and the facilitation of the curriculum team. Truly, this whole process really does align with the work that we're doing with the K-12 MTSS system. So looking at our district-wide leadership system, establishing systems for leadership, for the leadership in buildings to practice that collaborative goal setting centered on instructional excellence, as indicated in those rubrics and as part of our focus on Tier 1 instruction as part of the MTSS model, as well as to really look at thinking about our, expansion of staff engagement, because that takes us beyond those lab schools. It also really, even at the lab schools, one of the things we've discussed with our consultants is expanding staff engagement within the lab schools. Largely, the lab schools is about leadership. It's about how do you lead your building and improve instructional practices. So in year 2, we'd like to deepen that implementation and engage our staff even more. When we look at PD, we'd like to shift away from the cohort-based learning to really establishing a better collective knowledge within the district. I've had a number of conversations with our representatives from Keys to Literacy about moving to a model where on our PD days, on 2 of our PD days, we do almost like literacy learning centers so that we can select training and then have more staff circulate through that training rather than just a 40-person model. We would be using the Keys to Beginning Reading. We'd be selecting modules from that to be able to do. And then in grades 5 through 12, we would be shifting to the Essentials of Adolescent Literacy, which is a new program for Keys to Literacy, and we feel that that would really meet the needs in that grade level for helping all of our teachers across content areas address literacy practices within their instruction. Throughout all of this, truly, our instructional coaches in our district are our implementation drivers. Following all of these PDs, following the work of lab schools, they are really the people who are reinforcing learning and application via either coaching cycles, meetings about coaching, assistance with planning, and facilitating targeted follow-up PD. So they're the driving force behind this and really what will help us, because we all know that when you have a PD session, you have the PD session, but really it's about what do you do with the PD session after and how do you sustain that momentum, and I would say that our instructional coaches are really that drive. So in closing, our continuing that partnership with Keys to Literacy for a second year is going to allow us to build on the early progress that we've made in strengthening district-wide literacy systems. Again, our initial lab school data shows improvement in key areas such as database decision-making and professional development, indicating the work is beginning to impact instructional practices and collaboration among our staff. Teachers have reported in review sessions with our instructional coaches that the coaching and modeling from literacy experts are among the most valuable supports for refining classroom instruction and implementing strategies relative to structured literacy. A second year of the partnership will provide the time needed to deepen our implementation, expand our training, and ensure consistent research-based literacy instruction across the grade levels and content areas. So I thank you for your time this evening, for allowing me to share a little bit about our Keys to Literacy partnership.
Thank you so much, Dr. Gorla, and thank you for helping lead this process here in the district. With that, are there questions to my left for Dr. Gorla? We have some online, okay.
Hi, Dr. Gorla. I don't have any questions because I need some time to digest it all. But I wanted to say thank you for the presentation and thank you for all of the hard work that's been going on behind the scenes with all of this. It was really positive to hear the feedback that we got from Patty Montgomery and to see that relationship really be helping us move forward with all of it. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Alston?
Hi, thank you for this. I guess I just am wondering, like, looking at the contract that we're doing, I have a couple questions. One, I mean, everything seems to be, per the contract, focused at Arcola and Eagleville, correct? And I guess I just want to make sure, we're talking about also 5 through 12, so I guess I just want to make sure that the high school is also, I know we're doing Train the Trainer, and I guess I just want to make sure that we have enough staff, that we have enough people doing all this implementation to hit all the grades as well as the other elementary schools. So that was one question. And I guess another question I had was materials. The book looks like 40 copies of a book, and I just was wondering how those materials are distributed.
The materials what we'll do with the materials, because it's the keys to the essentials of adolescent literacy, is we'll provide a set number per school for them to have in the lending library so that they have that. During training, the trainers do give out resources as well. The biggest difference in the contract this year is we're really working with the professional development part to be more across the district rather than limited to just 40 people. We're trying to get that so that we create that collective knowledge there. The lab schools, I would agree, while it does, it is focused in on year 2 with Eagleville and with Arcola. Part of our goal as a curriculum team and as district leadership is to take what we're doing with our MTSS system and connect that to the lab school work so that we can look at, as a curriculum team, how do we take what goes on at a lab school and have that go on at the other schools. So that's really a key component of a goal for us with this plan for next year, address that, exactly what you said, to address that across the district.
Ms. Steele?
Thank you, and thank you for this. I was trying not to be the first one to speak. I more just have a comment rather than a question. As we've been talking about this, literacy is a standing update in Ed Committee, so we've talked about it often. But I actually wanted to share for the good of the school board information for while this is literacy focused, and literacy is often connected with reading and writing, right? Foundations and then extension into the secondary school, secondary reading and writing. I wanted to share, because it's a hyper focus of mine, so I follow researchers on my free time. And some of the research that I follow, there's actually a paper that just came out of Brown University that was published January 2026. And the paper is about a long-term random control study that is being reviewed by both Harvard University is cited in it and also Brown University. And I'm going to share the quote that reading interventions transfer to math gains. Improvements in reading achievement account for approximately 50% of gains seen in later math scores. What they are seeing is strong literacy foundations lead to math, because literacy, when you look at both reading and writing, input and output, that's critical thinking. You're building the skills of critical thinking, and that transfers across grade levels. So, and I'm sharing this with the rest of the board because I know that we're having to make hard decisions and we're looking at things when it comes to our budget. This is a vital, important foundational work that is laying the framework for our students to be successful. And this is a new study, January 2026. It just came across my feed, and it's wonderful. And I knew there was a connection, but this is the information that's coming out, and they're really looking at it. The other thing that they shared, and I wanted to connect this to the work from this year, because the first focus that was across for the 40 cohort with the keys to vocabulary, they said the literacy skills, there is a focus on literacy skills on broad cross-disciplinary reading skills and vocabulary have the highest connection to skills that cross academic areas and other things, because they're the ones most tied to cognitive skills. You teach kids to read and you teach kids to write, that's thinking on paper. And you give them broad vocabulary, they can access it and bring it into any academic area. So I wanted to share that information because I think it's really, really pertinent. I actually saw it today and I was like, ooh, goody. So that's the one thing I wanted to share. And the other thing I just wanted to share is that the people with Keys to Literacy, the founders, Joan Sedita, Patty Montgomery, who was Schools Cubed and who is working closely with the district, and also Kelly Ballard is she's one of the people who I follow. These are nationally recognizable and respected literacy leaders across the country. And I think that's really important because a lot of times we look at Pennsylvania, we look at Montgomery County, but the gains in literacy, when we keep hearing the NAEP scores are going down and nobody can read anymore, the gains are in other states like Louisiana, Missouri, and Arkansas. So we're working with people who are working across the country, and it's really important. So I'll be quiet now, and I'll get off my soapbox. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Anyone else to my left? Ms. Perdue?
Thank you for the update, and it was good to have heard Patty's feedback on how we're doing with our lab schools, and it tied well in with having the instructional coaches also share the work that they're doing as we're moving this along. So it's interesting, the professional development shift in reference to that, and I was kind of curious, with that shift, what do you think we'll gain from that with having, and I know you mentioned it'll be more district-wide. Was that based on feedback from the work that we're doing, or feedback from like our teachers, instructional development?
So it's a little bit of both. So It was interesting because some of the feedback for the Keys to Beginning Reading was, this is so great, but like, I love literacy and I know a lot of this and I know other people who would benefit from this. So that makes us start to think, okay, well, building background knowledge, just like when we are working with students in the classroom, background knowledge is such a key component to instruction. It's the same thing with teaching, having the background knowledge be the like level set the same is really important when we're starting to talk about, okay, instructional strategies for that we're going to be looking for during supervision and observation. So that was really the driving factor, was trying to make sure that everybody has collective knowledge and has access to some nationally known presenters. It's great. We do a lot as instructional coaches and as the curriculum team, but having that exposure to others is also really important.
Okay. And then as we're moving into year 2 for this, do we have a plan in place for making sure when we have new teachers joining us, like as far as onboarding, how are we making sure? Because I know a lot of times we spend, naturally, the resources we're putting towards this, I think is money well spent. We know that, and I think it's a big investment in our school district, in our teachers, in our students. But just making sure we don't lose sight of that. And so I was curious to how are we making sure that when we have new staff coming in, we are carrying that through, just because I know sometimes it gets lost, right? And 5 years later, new staff is like, we never received this training, or we're not, so.
Right. I would agree with you, and I think that's part of our articulation of our professional development plan. One of the things that we're working on as a curriculum department is what that PD plan looks like over the course of the next 2 years. Not just this, but also in components such as how do you onboard? Separate from induction, because there's your induction that you have to do with new teachers, but then how do you onboard when somebody's just new to the district? So laying that out, how that will work. What would the instructional coach's role be? What will the curriculum supervisor's role be? How will we leverage things like our Safe Schools application for recorded trainings? So that's all things that we're thinking about as well. Because like you said, you don't want to have these really great trainings and then just have them kind of go off and be stuck in the bubble of, 25, 26 and not be used moving forward.
Thank you. And then the final question, in reference to the program itself and then maybe the tools, how are teachers finding, are they easy to implement? And maybe it's with the help of the instructional coaches, but I'm just curious if we're gathering that insight and how easy it is to implement.
So I would say the target of the PD sessions is to give usable strategies that can, quick things that can be implemented within classrooms. From an example standpoint, we've seen that through walkthroughs. Mrs. Amici and I were doing some paired walkthroughs at Worcester today with special area teachers, and seeing vocabulary and seeing basic, early literacy things that were going on in special area classes. So it's great to see that literacy connection when you're across the building and not just in ELA class. So that's really, I think with any really strong professional learning session, you get your foundational kind of philosophical, here's your knowledge, but then you get the strategy for how do I turn around and use this tomorrow. That's what makes a good PD.
Thank you.
Are there any questions or comments? Mr. Mirsky?
Thank you for the presentation also. My question is really related, or an off-take of Ms. Alston's question, and that is when, under the current plan, when do we expect to have the staff completely oriented or trained across the entire district and this program fully implemented?
So I think that next year what we'll have is looking at our modules that we select for Keys to Beginning Reading and Essentials of Adolescent Literacy. We'll be looking at having commonality at the end of next year for what we select with that. We are also looking at our different literacy pathways with professional learning. So looking at how do we, what do we have that's a mandatory training? What do we have as an option, like for MIACs, whether that's an in-person MIAC or like a webinar or online course? What things are we going to advocate for teachers who have a further interest, who want to take like coursework for advancement, and what are in-person trainings that will also be run by the curriculum department?
And this is across the entire school district and all the elementary schools?
Yeah. Yes.
And it sounds like we expect by the end of next year that we'll
So by the
have
end,
rolled this out to across the school district, but we'll still have,
I think there's always work to do. It
Right.
doesn't stop. It's not like a finite, like you have this training and it's going to be over.
so do we expect that by the end of next year, we'll be on our own, or we'll have to continue to contract with outside parties to continue to train people?
Yeah, it's a great question, Glenn. I think that's one of the things that we had discussed previously is assessing where we are towards the end of year 2 to get that determination. We talked with Patty Montgomery about that. The original plan was a 3-year plan, but we're going to do a mid-year review next year to see what progress have we made, and is there an interest in continuing this into year 3? And so a little tough to answer now, but certainly something we can get back to the board around mid-year next year.
Thank you. That's what I was looking for. Thank you.
Ms. Graff?
Yeah, I'm gonna follow Glenn's comments a little bit further, because I just want to make sure I understand. If I understand correctly, there was a single 40-person cohort.
2 40-person
So,
cohorts.
2
one
40-person.
One for Keys to Beginning Reading and one for Key Vocabulary.
So
Keys to
do we
begin.
have 40 people that have gone through the process, or are there 80 people, or is there some combination of that, because some people went through both?
Nobody went through both. The Keys to Beginning Reading was for K to 4. So,
Okay.
and then Key Vocabulary is selected members from grades 5 through 8.
So we have 80 people who've gone through the process in year 1. How many additional people would have to go through the process in year 2 in order to be fully trained across the district? How many additional teachers is that?
So we have 400 teachers, right? And
So
so not
we're
all
gonna
of those
train-
are instructional teachers, some are counselors and
Well,
such.
so
But
let's just do the math for me.
so about let's say 360.
So let's say 360. So we did 80 teachers in year 1, and we're going to train 360 teachers in year 2.
Yeah, so I think it's a great question, and I think what happened and what Dr. Gorler was talking about was the turnaround training that existed. So those 40 teachers got that instruction, and so what happened was the coaches and then each grade level person from all the other buildings also got the training, turned around and gave that then to their teams when they went back to their buildings. And so the idea was the turnaround training this year. What we want to do is actually expand the training next year. It isn't the same training. It's actually digging deeper into what we did this year and spreading that out across the K-12 space in a different format. So everybody gets that initial one up front. That's the hope for next year.
Yeah, and I remember that we were going to do a Train the Trainer program. And to be honest, I'm not a huge fan of that program, because I think you lose something between the original training that comes from, the mouth of Patty Montgomery to the trainer to the next person, the third round, let's call it. The first round usually is pretty good, but the second round, it usually loses something in that process. So, the other thing I guess I'm concerned about is that I assume that you are all aware of the fact that if you don't use something that you've been trained in, either by teaching it, explaining it, or actually implementing it within the first 72 hours of actually completing the training, you will lose 70 to 80% of the content. It just doesn't stick, right? So if our teachers are going through professional development, how are we then making sure they're implementing? How is that being measured?
Yeah, so I would say, if we're looking at this as a one-time professional development, and then 72 hours after that effect, I think we're looking at it probably wrong. It isn't a one-time thing. It is a constant conversation that takes place in teaming meeting. It's revamped and renewed every month when they come back. It's discussed in our PD. So it becomes part of our discussions and conversations. The PD just kind of ignites the knowledge part of it, and then it becomes a practice within our buildings. And so it's funny when you say that, I could see that outlook from the outside, but I think about it internally, and it's really becoming part of our everyday talk. So it doesn't really feel like it's a one-time training. It feels like it's just building on our foundational knowledge so we can dig further into some of this work.
Okay, so if that's how it's being implemented, then how are you measuring that implementation side? on a monthly basis, it's happening in conversations, you're seeing teachers implement it in the classroom. How are we assessing? What's the measurement metric that we're using?
Well, one is observational data, right? You said it. I mean, we're seeing that more and more in our walkthrough feedback, in our conversations with staff, in their planning sessions. But as Patty Montgomery has told us numerous times, this is not something that gives you a quantitative value of increase in the first year. This is a 3 to 5 year process of changing the culture of how you're doing this. And so we're going to start, naturally, we're hoping to always see growth, but to see that major jump, the expectation is you got to give this time. And so that's, when it comes to quantitative stuff, we're certainly hoping that we see that at that point. But from our observational data, we're seeing a total change in the culture of how we're approaching literacy, how we're planning for literacy, how we're assessing that, what our interventions look like, how we're talking about it in our team meetings. There's definitely a shift in our building culture in that way.
So are we, I think of this as if you're going to observe a teacher, do you have a checkbox now that says literacy? That you're essentially looking for that so that we can say, wow, these teachers are doing an excellent job here, and we want to use them to help other teachers to understand how they could implement, right? Because when you're seeing the implementation in real time, that's the success, right? And we want to highlight that, I think, with the teachers that are doing it well and be able to utilize their experience to help teachers who maybe don't know how to implement it well.
Part of our work with our literacy goal this year was the development of a walkthrough document to guide our practice as observers, exactly like that. And that's something that we worked on in conjunction with Keys to Literacy, so that we would have a guiding document for the administrators to go in as they're making their comments in the walkthrough document and doing their observations. Very much like, and I would agree, noticing people who are doing things well is a really important thing. A great highlight from that, we had a recent professional learning day, and at the high school, we had a number of choice sessions that were run by teachers related to literacy practices, literacy and engagement practices, for that same reason, knowing that person X is doing this really well in their classroom. Will you share this with your colleagues? Because I do think one of the more impactful PDs that you can have is short sessions with your colleagues and sharing things that have worked in your classroom. So a lot of that occurs because of what you're observing and you're seeing in practice around across the district.
That's great. That's really great. And then I guess the last thing I was going to ask was, do we require specific professional development related to literacy? Or are we going to require that moving forward?
There is professional learning required related to structured literacy, dependent upon the certificate that you hold. So there will be, as part of our professional development plan, what that will look like. And that was part of the code changes that have come forth with regards to structured literacy. So we have already done that training for the people who needed that training. So you're thinking your elementary teachers, your reading specialists, anybody who holds, X, there's a list of certifications that if you hold this certificate, you must complete structured literacy training. Part of that initiative right now is the state is developing a guidance list of these are the trainings that you may use versus you may not use to count for that. One of the things we look to do is embed that annually rather than making that, when we think about required training, some of them are cyclical. So rather than saying, you're going to do this once every 3 years, we want that more to be embedded on an annual basis to reinforce those practices.
Right. And I guess I would just say, to Ms. Thiel's point earlier, I don't necessarily think that we should just be thinking about this as what is required. The district can make that requirement. Mm-hmm. We can understand and acknowledge that literacy is important to all teachers in all positions and make that a requirement for PD moving forward. Have we considered that?
Yes, much of what we've been doing is literacy across the content areas, so that is something that's important to us. So that's not delineated in state requirements, but that would be our local decision to continue that emphasis. That's great. I guess the other question that I feel like we need to ask is there any way that you have seen with the implementation so far that you think, I wish we could do this differently?
I wish if we had this tool, this number of trainers, this setup, we could do this better. And I'm getting to that because I just think the sooner we could get our teachers trained up and implementing in the classroom, the sooner we're going to see good results. So how do we get the implementation to happen as quickly as possible? How do we get them to walk in August and be like, I'm ready, I know what I'm doing this year, I've got a plan?
I would love to process that question and get back to you, because that's a
It's
great
fine.
question, and I don't think I've thought of that yet, so.
Because
I like
I
that.
think we're going along with the Keys to Literacy approach,
Yeah.
which is fine, but what if I said to you, I don't want to wait 3 to 5 years, I want this, by the end of next year, I want every teacher implementing, and I want to see this progress, right? What would you do? What would
Yeah,
you come back
it's
to me and
been
ask for?
It's been a really positive experience, but if I think back, if I could, knowing what I know now, go back
Mm-hmm.
a year, what is the one thing
Just
we'll get back to it. I
feel
like
free
that
to think
idea.
about
Yeah,
it, but I
appreciate it.
I do think that, like, we're a year into a 3-year program, and I think it's going well, but I always think there's ways we can improve, so.
Agreed.
I'm
Thank
happy
you.
to hear it. Thanks.
Ms. Steele?
Thank you. Thanks again. And again, sharing more of a comment just based on the discussion that has been talking. And I feel like I wanted to share some ways that I'm thinking and what I'm looking towards just based on the questions that have been asked so far. And let me see if I can get my thoughts straight, because that's always a struggle. I want to make sure that, so from my view, what is happening with Keys to Literacy. Keys to Literacy does have the professional development arm, which is what a lot of this presentation discussed, which is so incredibly important. And I can't, why is it 3 to 5 years? Why does that take so long? As someone who had a certification that did not have the knowledge I needed, I will be very honest in saying Pennsylvania teacher preparation programs did not have to include the science of reading in their programs until I think it was a year or 2 years ago. And they didn't. So imagine being certified to teach a child to read and not learning how to teach phonics, and thinking you can do it and practicing for years, and then realizing you didn't. And why did that continue for so long? Because I will keep myself short. And that's a very balanced literacy or whole language approach. That did not base what we now know, because we can get scans of the brain. The neuroscientists were invited into the conversation. But 1/3 of human beings, regardless of IQ, will learn to read just like a flower can grow in concrete. Another third will Band-Aid it with or without phonics and look okay. And then there will be a third who do not have diagnosable learning disabilities, who will not learn to read, or they will learn to read in a way that inhibits their comprehension and their thinking and their critical thinking. So that's why it's stuck around for so long, because a lot of parents then, too, in wealthier school districts, or parents who can afford, who saw a problem, then pay for tutors. And that covers up some of the testing as well. It's one of the reasons why you have school districts in areas that have a lower income average. They have lower test scores, because even if they had the same exact curriculum, parents are going to fill in when they see their kids struggling, and they're going to get tutors, and it happens across the country. So there's an important movement here in Pennsylvania. What Keys to Literacy is doing is that PD is filling in knowledge that is desperately needed, and sometimes teachers don't know they need it, and they're well-meaning teachers. They're teachers who are dedicated to their craft, and sometimes they do, but not all of it, or sometimes once you understand, yeah, you know what, the brain rewires. Like, it is when you learn that the brain literally changes. When a child learns to write and read, it's like magic. That's my brain. I'll stop being nerdy. Sorry, pulling it back. But that being said, when you learn that, that's foundational knowledge, but it's still not the practice. So what's Keys for Literacy doing? One, they're giving the why behind it, which is the brain needs this. But then they're also giving the strategies, and you can't do too much at once, because you have to apply it, but also if I have 10 new things I have to try at once, well, how do I cover my curriculum and what I do? There's like too many things to go. So you have to it's not easing in, it's more getting good at it and then layering and adding on, because you're doing it in real time. Then on top of that, there's that other element that is so vitally important, which is Patty Montgomery and Keys to Literacy is providing support to our principals and our curriculum department to create the structures that look at the data that we have on our students in order to respond in real time, because a knowledgeable teacher with no resources still can't respond. They still need the screeners and the data, and like if they're the general ed teacher and they have 25 kids in front of them, if there's a student who needs intensive intervention, where's the reading specialist and how do they qualify to get to it? So that's 3 layers of work that's being done. And this is something that all school districts are experiencing. So I guess I wanted to fill in that understanding for why there's that 3 to 5 year gap, because that's a huge lift in 3 areas. So I wanted to share that. So as a board member, what I'm looking for growth, what I'm excited to see next year and the year after is I'm going to look at our state test scores, and I'm going to look at ELA, and I'm going to look at the vulnerable populations. I want to look at our students with disabilities. I want to look at our students who economically disadvantaged. Those are the areas they're going to tell us how we're really doing and if it's working and applying. That's what I'm going to look at from here. And I do want to just kind of reiterate what Ms. Graff shared, which is that it's a lot of work, and I know that there's a lot of decisions being made right now, and I appreciate that. And but our students need this knowledge, right? As much work is being done and as exciting as it is, there are students who need the teachers to know that if they're struggling, they're not lazy in 6th grade, if they can't read an entire thing, if they can't spell on a social studies assessment, it doesn't mean they're not trying. They might really struggle with spelling, and spelling has no connection to IQ. Those are students who want to feel successful, and literacy is tied not only to success, but now we also know that we have a clear connection. I always kind of suspected, but there's a clear connection to other success in other content areas, but it's deeply tied to confidence and mental health. I will get off my soapbox. I hope I shared some impacts, because I felt like there were certain things that I wanted to share and fill in, so I'll be quiet now.
Thank you. Ms. Alston?
Thank you. And I've been thinking and listening to all these questions, and it makes me have a follow-up question related to Ms. Graff and Ms. Thiel's point, and that's about time. Like time that the teachers have to really integrate this, to collaborate, we ask a lot of our teachers in a day, and we're now asking more, and we're asking them to do something new and unfamiliar, and do all these kind of other steps, and then just this whole process. So I was just wondering how time and the implementation of this looks.
I think time is always a challenge, right? One of the things that we try to do with our professional learning sessions, especially those that are run, by the district, is to allow for that time for collaboration and planning for implementation. So as part of the in-service day, so that you learn something, you get the strategy you might try, and then you have some time to think about how am I going to use this, whether it's with your department, with your team. So I think that us, being creative and carving out that time is a significant thing to look at.
I guess when I think of it, I'm thinking more like in the school day, the teacher who is receiving maybe collaborative instruction from a peer, or the teacher who's giving that, just in the course of a normal school day. I'm glad that we're carving out time for specific professional development and specific lessons on this, but I guess in the school day, how does this look? And I guess also, what is the feedback, is there feedback from the teachers related to time? Does this make them feel squeezed? That kind of thing. I guess that's
time
what
is always a concern that's brought up. I do believe it at many of our grade levels. We do have collaborative planning time and team planning time that is used. I would say, high school wise, that's probably where our greatest stressor is related to time. If I wanted to get together and collaborate with the people who are also teaching the same subject as I do, just a function of the schedule is as more difficult.
I'd share too that if you think of the 2 separate components of the professional development or the PD that we talked about, which is which is the knowledge base that you're gaining. You're doing that, your in-service days, you're doing that potentially at even some of your teaming meetings. The strategy part of it, though, is the part where you don't want to over-douse people with, try 10 different strategies and see how it works. That is not what we're doing. It might be a walkthrough, a principal goes through, or a coach goes into, hey, try this strategy now when you do this the next time, right? And so they're starting to give them strategies here and there when it comes to literacy, when it comes to mathematics. It could be anything instructionally, really. That's what we don't want to overwhelm people with. The knowledge is great, they're absorbing that, but when you overdose the strategy part of it, it overwhelms people. Because now, if you think about it, you have 45 minutes with students in front of you. Now you're trying all these different strategies. You're actually out of practice. You're not even sure what you're doing sometimes. And so it's critical then the coach to go in and say, hey, I saw what you did at first period. Try this second period or try this third period and see how it works. I'll come in and watch it, and then we'll talk about it afterwards. And so that's been a much more effective way when it comes to the strategy part of it, which gives them a little bit more relief when it comes to that pressure, I would think.
And is there, the people who are trained in this, is there time that naturally occurs or is deliberately occurring to allow everyone to kind of get together in team, like, is it already, did we already have it set up like that, and we implemented this based on how we already had things set up with team meetings?
Great question. I think probably what Melissa was getting to too is the team meeting periods, depends on what grade level, as you guys know, contractually. There's different opportunities for that. And so core instructions in 5 to 8, they have individual team meetings that they can meet with their department meetings. Our elementary group does plan together. They also have time in the morning they do meet sometimes at recess time even to do some planning and data sets. So they're finding that opportunity to do it. Probably the most challenging place for people to be able to meet that are the same teaching schedules, obviously, is the high school, because it's such a dynamic situation on when you're teaching and is your planning period the same. It's the one time it's not the same. And so that's been, I think, probably the most difficult one for us to make sure that they're able to do some of that teaming time. So we really do have to maximize our in-service days when it comes to the high school. But yes, the other groups have that already built into their schedules.
And with the high school then, is there a way to, if we're finding that it's difficult for everyone to get this information to use in their classrooms at the high school, is there a way to, with a supplemental contract, with somehow that we can make sure if time is limited and that's what we need to address, can we somehow get that back from, get that from the teachers? If we see we need to. I'm just trying to think of ways.
I think we do need to look at that, just to be honest, and I think that's something we're going to continually do with the high school. But it's probably the toughest place to do it. But yes, we will absolutely continue to work on that. Thank you for the suggestion.
Any other comments for Dr. Gorla? Dr. Gorla, I want to thank you for leading this critically important effort, and it's always a pleasure to have you here. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
So at the next meeting, we have the Spirit of Methacton and the M Awards. We have the committee reports. I just want to bring your attention real quick, if I could, under advisements, under the superintendent's report. In there, while we're not asking for the board to vote on this, we had a discussion at the Finance Committee meeting of March, and as a result of that, Ms. Steffi has a handout, I believe that's at each of your table. I just want her to go through that so that everyone's on the same page with the modification of the recommendation date changes. Ms. Steffi? I'm sorry.
Sure. Thank you, Dr. Zerbe.
I don't think so, no.
In February, the board approved an early retirement incentive for Methacton Education Association employees. To accommodate the incentive submission deadline, it is necessary to move the adoption of the 26-27 final budget to a special voting meeting prior to the June 16th work session. The proposed budget will still be adopted in April, as this is necessary to meet state deadlines. Key dates. Friday, April 10th is the deadline for MEA employees to submit their intent to retire. April 15th, the Finance Committee will review the proposed final budget. April 16th, we will hold the second of 2 public budget forums. On April 28th, the board will vote on the proposed final budget. The proposed final budget will include identified savings to date, such as discontinuing the use of one-to-one devices for grades K to 1, and an Arcola curriculum revision, both endorsed at the March Education Committee meeting. It will also include savings associated with security scheduling and changes to nurse coverage. It will not include any of the alternative reductions discussed during the adoption of the preliminary budget, as we are waiting to see if there are any savings to be realized from the early retirement incentive. At the May 13th Finance Committee, as well as the May Board work session, the draft final budget will be presented. At this time, any reductions from the early retirement incentive will be realized. At the June 10th Finance Committee meeting, the 26-27 final budget will be presented, and on the June 16th, the board will vote to adopt the 26-27 final budget.
Thank you, Ms. Steffi. Are there any questions from what Ms. Steffi had shared, or the critical dates being April 28th and June 16th? Ms. Graff?
Yeah, I just want to clarify that I think what I heard you say is that there is no movement on the alternatives list until we get past the April 28th presentation.
Correct.
And if we need to consider those alternatives, are they they'll be addressed in May, and then we'll hear about them at the May work session? Would be the first time we would get that information?
At the May Finance Committee meeting. So the Finance Committee will hear them first, and then the next week we'll take them to the work session.
So we're talking then it would be between April 28th and May 13th.
Correct.
So I guess my question is 2 weeks enough time for you to gather that information and present it at Finance?
It is. The reason I'm not presenting it at the April 15th Finance meeting, the deadline for the MEA submissions is April 10th, which is Friday, and typically by Friday, all the materials for the next week's meeting are handed out and posted, so.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
Are there any other questions for Ms. Steffi on the change in the dates? If there are no objections to that at this moment in time, I will let the board know that we will begin to produce the advertisements that are required for those dates, and we'll proceed as scheduled. Thank you. We will have, obviously, public comment on action items next week, and then we'll get into the fiscal items. Ms. Steffi?
So there are 4 fiscal items for the board's review. 9A, list of bills. 9B, treasurer's report. 9C, budgetary transfers. 9D, Sobeck Roofing. Approve Mark J. Sobeck Roofing Consulting Incorporated of Luzerne, PA, to provide full-time inspection services for Worcester Elementary School and Skyview Upper Elementary School roof projects at a cost of $72,062.
Thank you, Ms. Steffi. Are there any questions on fiscal items as presented here this evening to my right? Seeing none to my left, are there any questions on the fiscal items? How about online? Is there anybody online? Okay. All right. Seeing no questions, we'll move on to personnel items. Dr. Sorgini.
Thank you, Dr. Zerbe. Good evening, and thank you. The personnel items for this month are as follows. 1 resignation professional, Rivka Milrod, 3rd grade instructor at Eagleville. We're grateful to Rivka for her dedicated service to the students of Methacton, and we wish her well. There are 4 resignations classified. Prince Vias, personal care assistant at Woodland. David Uglow, network manager at Farina. We thank Dave for his 8 years of dedicated service to Methacton, and we wish him well. Charles Holly, resignation for retirement, custodian at Eagleville. After 29 years of dedicated service to the Methacton community, we thank Chuck for the countless ways in which he helped to make Eagleville a welcoming place for our students and staff. His hard work and kindness have been a fixture of the Eagleville community for decades, and the entire Methacton family wishes him well in his retirement. And Janet Bauer, secretary to the principal at Skyview, also resignation for retirement after 25 years of dedicated service to the Methacton School District. For a quarter of a century, Janet has been the welcoming face, the calm voice, and the steady heartbeat of the school office as she supported literally generations of students, families, and staff with grace, professionalism, and genuine care. We're grateful to her for the countless ways in which she enriched our school community, and again, the entire Methacton family wishes her all the very best in retirement. There is one job description, Network Manager, which includes updates to the position based on changes in technology since the last time the job description was updated. There's one uncompensated leave administrative, John Smink, Assistant Principal at Skyview, for the dates listed. One uncompensated leave classified, Maria Longenecker, part-time office assistant at the high school, for the dates listed. There are 2 sabbatical leaves, both for the dates listed, Devin Thomas, special education instructor at Worcester, and Jennifer Specht, special education instructor at the high school, and supplemental contracts for a mentor, chaperones, athletic coaches, and also extended season pay. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sergini. Are there any questions on personnel items to my left? Ms. Alston?
Just a question about staffing the assistant principal at Skyview and the special education instructor at Worcester.
Both of those positions have actually been vacant since the beginning of the year, and the individuals in those positions will continue on.
Any other questions for Dr. Sergini to my left? Seeing none, to my right. Thank you, Dr. Sergini. Items of, I'm sorry, anybody online? Okay. Curriculum and programs, Dr. Regina.
Thank you, Dr. Zerbe. Just 2 items here. First is Chapter 339 plan. As you remember, this was on the February agenda to sit for 28 days, and this is the month that we will approve it. And so this is now reappearing on our agenda for this month. The second is the Keys to Literacy contract that Dr. Gorla was able to share with us this evening, some of the content about that. And this is for the 26-27 school year for $105,840. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Regina. Any questions to my left? Ms. Cleary?
Yeah, on 11A1, Dr. Regina, did we get any objections to the school counseling plan?
We did not.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Alston?
Also on the school counseling plan, so is that, I guess that's something we give to the state, and that's about, it's mostly about, I looked through it, and it's mostly about career readiness, career awareness. So, but that doesn't mean that that's our guidance plan. Like, we're still doing our lessons on interpersonal relationships
Absolutely,
and feelings
yes.
and all that.
Yeah, the
Okay.
339 plan is the career plan. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, you bet.
Any other questions to my left? Seeing none, to my right. Any online? Okay. Thank you, Dr. Regina. Policy. Dr. Regina?
Thank you, Dr. Zerbe. We do have 2 items that will be voted on this month for second read. For first read, you see we have a number of them listed. We did have a busy policy meeting this month. I do want to just call attention to the board, policy 801. As you see on the list, it does look a little bit out of place. This was one that we passed on for first read last year. It just did not make the board agenda, and so it only had spacing and formatting changes. Was just speaking with Ms. Chanda, so she's aware as well, and Ms. Akendo. But we are still recommending this for first read. Thank you.
Are there any questions to my left on any matters of policy? Seeing none, to my right. Seeing none online. No? All right, thank you, Dr. Regina. Under other, we have gifts and donations. To approve a generous donation from the DEI Task Force to the Methacton High School Black Student Union Club to assist with a field trip and transportation in the amount of $200. Under special counsel, we see approve the use of McNeese, Wallace, and Nurick, LLC, effective April 1, 2026, a special counsel for matters of contract negotiations and Title IX. The motion acknowledges that the Education Department of Fox Rothschild, who is currently approved as special counsel for these matters, will become the education group of McNeese, Wallace, and Nurick, LLC. No changes are being made to the terms of the representation, current rate structure, or personnel. And the last item, there are likely to be some additions to the roster for drivers for transportation. With that, are there any questions under matters of other to my left? Ms. Alston?
Just on the special counsel, do we currently have a contract in place with them, with Fox Rothschild?
That is correct.
Okay, and is that, I guess, with no changes being made to the rate structure, is that being extended without changes, or?
That is correct. Yeah.
Extended another, like how, I guess, for how long?
I believe the letter that they provided us is for another full year.
Okay, another full year with the same rate?
I can confirm that.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
Ms. Perdue?
I just have a question. And you said we currently do have a contract with them, and when does that contract expire? Well,
I guess to be clear, it's not technically a contract where there's
Okay.
actually a start date and an end date. These are rate, these are letters of rates and terms for which, if we were to use them, we can use them. So for example, if there's a Title IX matter that comes up, we don't typically use our solicitor for the district for those particular matters because they have to represent us or to represent the board in those particular matters if it so comes to that. So we need immediate counsel to address those matters. And historically, we've also used Fox Rothschild for contract negotiations. So these are the actual two things that we've traditionally used Fox Rothschild for, and they would be continued to be the things that we would recommend to use them for if we so need them. It does not, okay, it does not obligate the district to continue using Fox or this firm going forward. So at any time you choose that you would want to go with a different firm, you just say the word and we put an RFP out, or we engage with an engagement letter from another firm to provide those services. But given the fact that we just received this notice, and given the fact that we don't really have any contract negotiations in the future, we are only concerned about matters of Title IX if it so materializes, and we do have a strong working relationship with the folks from Fox Rothschild for that process, and we just recommend at this point, until the district decides otherwise, that we continue that relationship with those particular attorneys at these rates until such time we feel that we want to change that if that's necessary.
Okay, so I would just ask, when the time comes when we think we have to engage, bring it to the board ahead of time, just so if the board wants to consider an RFP or any change forward, just so we know, so we can take a look at it. I don't know if that makes sense, what I'm asking for. What I'm asking for is because they are, and I understand just because the NCIU also have the same issue, but I think they engage with that firm a little bit different than us. Because we don't really have we're not currently under contract with them, and in the event we need any services from them, I would like to ask that we are provided information ahead of time if we need to consider going out for our RFP or not.
So I think what I'm hearing, to make sure I have that understanding, if there's a Title IX matter that materializes, we would make the board aware that we wanted to engage Fox Rothschild. Is that what you're asking?
It will be McNeese, right?
I understand.
Yeah, okay.
So that's the exact reason why this is on the agenda here this evening, so that
So-
in the instance that a matter, we have 10 days to work through and put the people in place.
Yeah.
So what we could do is, if the board so desires, is I would recommend that we adopt this, and then if the board wants us to go out to RFP, we can do that, over the next month or two, do that process, and then come back and make the change. I just don't want to be absent without someone to turn to in the instance that we're required to put, I believe is it a decision maker? No, it's not a decision maker. Okay, it's the decision maker in the Title IX process.
Okay.
So we have 10 days to do that, and this really just covers us.
Okay.
So if we want to, we can certainly have that conversation about maybe for the long term, we want to put an RFP out, and we want to do that. We're not objecting to that.
Okay.
We're trying to protect the district in this interim change.
Yeah, that's fine. Mr. Murphy, have a comment?
No, I was just going to try to clarify. I mean, basically, we don't have a contract today. They're not proposing to change the rate schedule or the timing of the rate schedule. It's just they're changing their legal entity, and we need to change the agreement to have this new firm cover us in the interim. It hasn't, I guess it's not been our policy to have, we didn't put it out to RFP before. We don't have a contract. Like, if we want to do that, that's kind of a change in what we're doing, right? So
I think the challenge is most of the legal services that and except for the district solicitor, we did put that out to RFP years ago, and that's been the process. But for these other special counsel services, typically they come at recommendations from other attorneys or from other school districts, for which, have had success in dealing with those particular issues. And so when we contact those, because it's a service, it's not required to bid, but it is a service that we get what's called an engagement letter. And that engagement letter spells out the things that they will provide under that particular service at the rates that they provide them. We then bring that to the board for their approval, and we move that forward. So in terms of Fox Rothschild, it was many years ago that we did that process for contract negotiations, and that it's just been the practice. And then when the Title IX law changed, okay, we informed the board that we were going to use them because we couldn't use our solicitor for that matter. And the only other firm that we deal with traditionally has been Deschelle Bartle, which typically only does land or construction type of things for us. So we didn't include them in this process, and Fox Rothschild had expertise in the Title IX area, and that's how we kind of ended up at Title IX with them. Because we were already engaged with them under contract negotiations, and they had the resource to take this on when the law had changed 2 or 3 times in that process.
How long is this rate schedule, or this contract change, or this naming change, how long does the current rate schedule go to?
So that's the question that Ms. Alston asked. I believe it's a year, but I got to read through the letter and confirm that. But that's the intent. I know that many other entities, like for example, North Monco, the IU, use this education group from Fox Rothschild as their primary solicitor. And there have been other conversations with respect to that. That's not what we're asking here.
Yeah.
But that's, once I get that answer, I'll provide it in the board memo for everyone to be clarified on. Ms. Alston?
I was going to ask, could it be added to the motion, the current rate schedule will remain in place through whenever?
Yeah, I can certainly change that. I tried to include their language in here. So this is really their language that they recommend to us, which includes no changes are being made to terms, but I can actually put the rates into the motion if you like.
The rates would be great, as well as when they're good through.
Okay.
Thank you.
Ms. Clary?
I would not suggest putting the rates in. I think just, if you want to say the current rate structure, I'm going to be surprised if there's a beginning and an end date on the rate structure, because that's not generally how it works. It generally works, attorneys tell you what the rate structure looks like, and you have that and you work under that until such time as the firm decides it needs to change its rates, and then it notices its clients. So I hope you do, but I'm going to be surprised if you do. And so it may not be possible, just so everyone's aware.
I think some other entities have received a rate structure that has a good through date, so that's why I just, and the rates don't have to be in there, but just, if you could just put through.
Yeah, and just for everyone's clarity, I did read the letter, and the letter, I believe, said for a year, but I want to be 100% sure, so that I'm going to get that for you. But that means that they're going to hold those people, the rates, and the terms are going to be the same as being represented under Fox Rothschild now. That's what the intent of that letter was,
And I
to
think
make everyone have an
Ms.
easy
intent
transition.
was just to get it on the calendar, that we review this at some point in the future, to decide whether we want to put this out to bid or not. I mean,
That is why I asked, just
Yeah,
because I
so-
know others have received different, and I think the rate structure is something that is probably a discussion later on, but I just wanted to make sure when the time come, if we need to engage, and maybe not for Title IX, but in the future. Thanks.
Okay. Any other questions, Ms. Graff?
Yeah, I think my question, I think Ms. Cleary addressed part of my question. The other question I had was, if we have worked with these attorneys for a fairly long time, and they've done a good job. As recently as in this last year, when we did contract negotiations, I was pleased with them. I think that, I don't want to speak for Mr. Mursky, but I think that he was pleased with them, and I think the administration was pleased with them. So I'm not sure why we would want to consider going out for bid to another firm. And I think the board needs to make sure that we understand that what the reasons are for doing that, if we're going to do that. And I guess I'd just like some clarity around that. Before we go through that process, I'd like to make sure we understand what we're trying to do in that process. And, at this point, they're not changing rates, they're not bumping the rates up to an untenable amount or something that would seem to instigate that. So I just want to be clear on what we're
Yeah,
asking.
the administration is not recommending that we go out to RFP. I'm trying to clarify that this is a motion that addresses a more immediate challenge if in fact we don't have someone able to represent us under special circumstances for Title IX at this very moment. And I just basically said, I wasn't sure where everybody sits on the matter myself, but I know that it's come up in North Monco. I know that it's come up in the IU, so I know some board members are more privy to some of these other conversations about this change. And as such, I want to leave it open to the full board to understand that this does not commit you to anything other than giving us an opportunity on April 1st and beyond to continue using the people that we've trusted and worked with on Title IX. I would recommend that if we were ever to get to the point where we were talking about contract negotiations, we would have to have a serious conversation about what firms would do that representation for us. There's always a good conversation. That's always a good conversation to have, especially the type of relationship you want to have in the negotiation process. Do you want people that have the experience doing these things, or that have come with a certain level of experience and credibility, all those types of pieces. So with that, we can certainly talk in future about what we want in the long term. But all this really is allowing us to do is to create a stopgap for which is being presented because of a change from the firm, so that we can get your approval to continue at least the Title IX stuff until such time we decide otherwise. And if we want to do an RFP, we just need that direction from the board, and we'll certainly go through that process, and we'll show you how we've done that in the past. So I hope that
And I
was
just have to
more
say, I
clear.
have no objections with what's on here, but I want to clarify that in the future, if we need them for services outside of the Title IX, it will be good for the board to consider, because I think the rate changes may be different. That's all I want to say, so that's clear.
Your point's well taken. So I think this motion allows the administration to work with them for contract negotiations and for Title IX, and that's it. If we have to do something else, we would come to the board for that.
Thank you.
And with those matters, we'll move into the dates for board members' calendars. I'll turn that back over to Madam President.
Thank you. And the dates are available for the board. It's also posted here on the agenda. And now I'll check if we have any old or new business from the board. Any online? All right. At this point, we'll move to courtesy of the floor, and the Board of School Directors will now provide opportunity for residents to make comments on matters that are or may be before the board. The board asks that you keep your comments to 3 minutes or less. The Board of School Directors may choose to respond to the matters following conclusion of your comments. You can also submit questions via email to information@methacton.org.
Jim Malik, Worcester. Ms. Graff, when you were talking to the chief of police, you said we had our student protest here. Your student protest? You had a student protest here. I reviewed the 2/17/26 meeting on the district's YouTube page, and guess what? there's a minute and 51-second segment that's missing. Right when you are talking about the protest. Did you know that? Did you review it? I found it on my end. Because I compared it to it, I'm like, wait a second, I thought I saw him say stuff. Maybe you could look into that and find out, because this is the second time I've seen it happen. At that meeting, the Methacton Ice Out protest was discussed. You said the activity was conducted respectfully. The activity, it's a protest. On the other hand, I think you were talking about the kids that were complaining about the mascot. You said they were, quote unquote, misguided. I think it's the other way around. According to the Times Herald, ICE agents were attempting to take into custody someone with an alleged expired visa, DUI, and someone who allegedly weaponized his vehicle by ramming an ICE vehicle. And you guys applaud or protest about that? After the board's comments, I got copies of the oaths of office you took. You swore to support, obey, and defend the Constitution of the U.S. A violation of your oath is a misdemeanor and can result in a fine, imprisonment, and or removal from office. And you can look at page 1 because that's where it's at. I would read it closely. Ms. Thiel, you came to the defense of the protesters citing Tinker versus Des Moines. Did you actually read the case? Because it didn't support your position, and it had to do with students wearing armbands. 2 students out of 18,000 wearing an armband. And it says specifically in there, it had nothing to do with group protests. So I think it's kind of ironic you guys are all about literacy, but you're going to let kids skip out during reading class to protest. Now, the other things I gave you, the following pages, 2, 3, and 4, are all about right to know. You spend $1 million on right to know, keeping me information from me. File right to know requests. Well, page 3, 2, 3, and 4, page 2 is the alpha employer list given to Winnie Hayes and Jim Beam of the Methacton Education Foundation. District head of households, page 3, parent data for the Methacton Education Foundation. Page 4, class list for Nikki Krelovich of the Methacton Education Foundation. Yeah, I got it all wrong. I should have just joined the Methacton Education Foundation. I wouldn't have to file any right to know requests.
Thank you for your comments.
Amy Smith, Worcester. I just wanted to take a minute to thank you for the presentation this evening about literacy. I thought Dr. Gorla was wonderful. I've been attending the Education Committee meetings when I can, and the discussion in there about curriculum in general is just so insightful and really well done, and the administrators, I think, are just doing a terrific job with coming prepared to those meetings, coming prepared to these meetings, and just really committing to the work. So I just wanted to take a minute to thank Dr. Gorla for her presentation this evening. I took down some notes, and I feel like I understand what the district is doing and how and why, and I just think that's great. And as the parent of a student at Arcola, I just want to also mention Dr. Eworth and his work that he's doing around literacy. He's just impressing me at every turn. So it's been a great experience, and I hope that the district commits to that work and continues in that vein, because it really seems to be making, anecdotally from what I can see, it's making a huge difference. And then just one other comment too about Mrs. Bowers at Skyview. I thought Dr. Sorgini really gave maybe shed a little tear in the back there talking about her and just how much she means to the Methacton community in general. I mentioned to my kids this evening that she was on the agenda for retirement, and there was a big hush and a moment where everyone actually was looking at my face while I was talking because they were they all know her, and all the students appreciate her. I know the parents definitely appreciate her. So it's a well-earned retirement, even though I'm sad to see her go. But she has been such an asset to this community, and I just wanted to take a minute to say that. So thank you.
Thank you for your comments. At this point, I'll check if the board have any comments. No? And then with that, I will ask for a motion to adjourn. All right, Ms. Clary and Ms. Steele. All right, at this point, our agenda meeting.